along the Continental Divide. I'm Ted Koppel. Face the Nation is coming up. Please join us when our trumpet sounds again next Sunday morning.
I'm Robert Costa in Washington, and this week on Face the Nation, the fall campaign season heats up. Politics enters a disaster zone. President Biden spent part of his Labor Day race. GOP candidate of the presidential race. GOP candidate Nikki Haley joins us. We'll ask her how she's keeping up as the former president continues to dominate the polls. And we'll speak with Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who recently delivered a speech in an early primary state, calling on the Democratic Party to do more for working-class voters. What about a potential independent ticket? We'll talk with former Maryland Governor Republican Larry Hogan, who is a leader of a bipartisan group that could launch a presidential bid. Will Hogan be on it?
I have not closed the door to that.
We'll have analysis from political strategists, Democrat Ashley Etienne and Republican Terry Sullivan. Then, as President Biden gets ready to travel to Asia for a meeting with world leaders this week, we'll hear from Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, who just got back from her trip to Beijing. What did she accomplish amid growing tensions between the U.S. and China? It's all just ahead on Face the Nation. Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. Margaret is off today. Labor Day weekend typically begins the unofficial end of summer and traditionally is when presidential campaigns ramp up. So we begin this morning with Republican presidential candidate, former UN ambassador, and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Good morning, Ambassador Haley.
Good morning, Bob. Great to be with you.
Ambassador, let's begin with Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, who appeared to freeze up before cameras in recent days for the second time in 2 months. His doctor then issued a statement saying McConnell, who was hospitalized earlier this year after a fall, is able to continue to work. Quote, occasional lightheadedness is not uncommon in concussion recovery, the doctor wrote. Ambassador, you said this in recent days. The Senate is, quote, the most privileged nursing home in the country, and McConnell needs to, quote, know when to leave. Do you believe it's time for McConnell to step down from his leadership position?
Bob, I am completely for term limits. I'm completely for mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75, and I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. Here you have Mitch McConnell, who's done great service to the country. You have Dianne Feinstein, who had a great career. You've got Nancy Pelosi, who's been there a long time. At what point do they get it's time to leave? They need to let a younger generation take over. We want to go and start working for our kids to make sure we have a strong national security, to make sure we have a stronger economic policy, to make sure that America is safe. And we can't do that if these individuals refuse to give up power. This is not just a Republican or Democrat problem. This is a congressional problem. And they've got to know when to leave. It is time to pass this down to a new generation of conservative leaders that want to take our country to a better place.
So just to be clear, when Republican senators come back to Washington, should they have a leadership shakeup on the table, and should they talk about potentially having somebody else come in as the leader in the Senate?
I want this for Republicans and Democrats. I want to make sure that they all know it's time to go. There's a reason